We're talking actors and directors who put on the shows.
We're talking playwrights and designers who you'll want to know.
From the very first rehearsal to the final curtain call.
We might be off Broadway, but we're talking about it all.
'Cause we're two local gals
with global pals. It's everything, everything, everything theater.
with Benita
And Ellen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everything Theater Podcast, the podcast where we talk about
everything theater. We're going to need like a new song soon, I think. Hi, everybody. I'm Benita Zahn.
Hi, and I'm Ellen Cribbs. And before we get going today, I want to let you know that we are sponsored by Harbinger Theater. They're doing a production of Swing State by Rebecca Gilman, and it's running until November 23rd. Check it out. I was lucky enough to go to their preview, and phenomenal. I love plays where you can audibly hear gasps when something happens, and that certainly happened in Swing State. Here's a little synopsis for you. Recently widowed, Peg tends to the native plants in her 40-acre rural Wisconsin prairie backyard, her solitary days interrupted only by visits from a family friend with a checkered past. When a mysterious theft alerts the authorities, a string of events unfold that forever changes their lives. As I said, you can catch it until November 23rd. It is at the Sand Lake Center for the Arts. Please go support them. Only $15.
And it's great. I was out there over the weekend. The performances are uniformly fabulous, worth the drive, and it's not as, I know everybody goes, oh, Sand Lake, it's not that far. And besides, they always have, you know what I always say? They've got great coffee and cookies.
Exactly.
That's always nice. That's very nice. Yeah.
So we've got David Girard with us, who doesn't bring cookies or coffee, but he's always he's always fun to run into. He's always fun to talk to. The producing artistic director of the Troy Foundry Theater, but so much more. And you're sort of let's say Mr. Christmas antithesis Christmas, with the show that you have. David's got a one-man show that go see. I'm just going to say that his performance is incredible. And it's in a way that you haven't experienced. Well, David, give us the 411.
Well, it's an adaptation that was adapted by a really good friend of mine, Wes Bruick, who's a performer, director, writer, producer, educator. We met during our time at Saratoga Shakespeare Company, and he is now an assistant professor at the of acting and directing at Central Connecticut State University, and is also the producing artistic director of a company called Times Fool Company. And he originally adapted this with me in mind the first year that he presented it, but I got booked. I forget in what. I think it was actually Wizard of Oz. Actually, yes, it was Wizard of Oz. So I couldn't do it, and so he did it himself, but he did adapt it with me in mind. He's also a really fantastic performer, and so I got a chance to see it, and the next year I was like, okay, well, now I'm ready to do this, and that was a couple years ago. So this will be the third year that I do it, and for the actor that's playing the part, it is sort of a theatrical tour de force. I mean,
let me just jump in for a sec. It is an adaptation of the Scrooge story in a way you've never seen before.
Yeah, because it emphasizes the Gothic elements of the classic tale. But I think it maintains in a way that I think some versions we see don't, which is it's spooky. It's a ghost story. It comes from the tradition of telling ghost stories during the Victorian era around Christmas time. But it also stays true to its heartwarming message of compassion, redemption, the sort of spirit of the season. Embodying the spirit of the season, as we all should do. And certainly my take has a little bit more edge to it. I kind of dispense with dialects when it comes to me telling the story. It's David Girard telling the story. I don't try to change who I am as the narrator. I'm not Dickens, right? I'm not this 19th century Brit. It's me telling the story as if I've told it hundreds of times. Sort of, it starts that way. It's very poor theater. The play has just a pile of crap basically at center stage that's covered with a drop cloth. and then I kind of build the space and then build the play using minimal props, little scenery, very little lighting, and it's kind of wonderful. And I have to give David Baker, who directs me in this production. David is a professor at Russell Sage. I've known, you guys know David. David is actually, he's also performing in A Christmas Story at Playhouse Stage Company.
With Ellen.
Opening very soon. So he's doing double duty. I was doing, we were doing double duty both last year. Last year I was in
Sherlock.
I was in Sherlock Carol. I almost forgot the name of the show. At the same time, I was working on A Christmas Carol, and David was directing me in A Christmas Carol at the same time as he was working on the show, which is super fun. We can do that. But Wesley's production is really great, but it's so, even though it's the same words, it's so different in the way that we present our production. And David, we were actually in this room in my apartment, and the first time we read it, I read the entire script during the read through with a British accent, right? And he was like, I have a note for you. I have one big note for you. What's that note? And he goes, I would really prefer that you didn't do an accent. And I was like, oh, but it's A Christmas Carol. It's Dickens. I'm not sure that makes any, and I was really kind of like, kind of fighting this. I'm like, I'm not sure I agree with that choice. And I'm like, it's London. It's the 19th century. And he's like, London is never mentioned. The word London is never mentioned in the story. And I was like, I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, you're right. It isn't mentioned. Oh my gosh. And the fact that Troy in of itself is a very Victorian city. I mean, think about it. We have 90 blocks of the most intact Victorian architecture in the country. There isn't a place really quite like it. And there is a kind of sister city to the Victorian London that we think of when we're in Troy. Troy during Christmas time, it's very magical once it starts to snow because of the architecture. Obviously, we have Victorian Stroll, which the first weekend of Christmas Carol will take place during Victorian Stroll. And it's the place where Twas the Night Before Christmas was written in Troy. So this town, this city has a really strong connection to Christmas. But it's also a city that suffers from, we have a serious mental health crisis in this city. We have a serious homelessness problem in this city. Food security is a real issue. And so those pieces of the story, especially via Dickens' narrative, which that's the wonderful thing about this, is that it's not just dialogue, right? I'm regurgitating a lot of Dickens' narrative, and we don't usually get to see that in live action Christmas carols, right? And the language is so rich, but it also really leans into how destitute a lot of these people in London are, and how Scrooge ignores them and refuses to sort of deal with it until visited by these three ghosts.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I just want to jump in and ask, you mentioned a few minutes ago about doing two shows at the same time, and one of them is a one-man show.
Yeah.
The one we're focusing on. Talk to us a little bit about your process. That's a lot of lines, dude.
Yeah, it's easier this year because it's the third year. So last year, I did take for granted a little bit last year, thinking the lines would come back sooner. And because I was working on another show, I was like, oh no, oh no, this isn't happening very quickly. So it felt a little seat of the pants. And it's a lot of text, obviously. The show runs, I think something like 55 minutes. It's pretty brief, but again, it's just me, right? And it is large swaths of narrative text, which can be difficult to make active, right? I think we're very successful in activating that text, but it takes a lot of work, a lot of energy that you have to kind of punch behind such a dearth of words, right? But I don't record my text. I write it down. I use this thing called the Yale method, which is writing the first letter of every word down, and I follow the pagination. I don't change the pagination. I follow the exact pagination, and so I do a draft of doing, because if I were to write every word down, like I'd have a crippled hand. So that's like the Yale method is something I started using, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years ago, because as you get older, it gets harder to learn lines. It's just natural. And if there's something that I really abhor, and my students know this, and my actors know this when I'm directing, is I really hate paraphrasing. I hate when actors don't know their lines word for word, particularly when we're dealing with some of the world's greatest texts ever written. It drives me nuts with Shakespeare, certainly, because you're killing the meter. But especially with something like Dickens, like, why, who am I to be so presumptuous to use my own words? Now, I mean, obviously Wesley adapted it, so there are slight changes here and there. Obviously it's really cut down from the original text, but a lot of the language is still very much intact. And so getting that right is really important to me. So that's basically how I learn the lines. I've never been a big believer in, I can't really learn my text until I'm moving on stage. And I'm like, I kind of call bullshit on that. Like, the American theater does not allow us the kind of time, it's not like we're like in the Moscow Art Theater in the late 19th century working on Chekhov's The Three Sisters for a year and a half before an audience sees it. Like, that would be great. It'd be amazing living in that world where we had such time to work on text and motivation and objectives and all that stuff, but we just don't, right? So you have to, I mean, Alan knows this, and so do you, Benita. Like, when we work at the Rep or any other professional theater company, a lot of times the expectation is to come in, knowing the text pretty well. So with this, right now I'm rehearsing with me, right? I don't start working with David until next week. And then we plug Connor in, and Connor is, we call it a one-man show, but it's really kind of like a 1.5-man show because Connor does all the underscoring. The underscoring is so massive to the piece. It creates so much atmosphere and tone, and ultimately affects even the visual composition because of the way that the music works with the lighting and the way the music works with the staging. And David Baker has done such a good job staging me through this. And last year we revisited it and we tweaked things, and this year we'll probably tweak things. There's a couple big ticket moments in the play that I still feel like I can do better, that I think I can stage better, that we can make a little bit clearer. One of them is the Cratchit family scene. That's a bear, because I'm playing like basically 6 characters in about 4 minutes. And so making more clarity in that. The ghost at the end, there's a sort of shadow play that I do that works, but I think can be way better, way scarier. I want to, I'm trying to dig into more of the Marley moments are pretty good, but I'd like that to even be a little bit scarier, to really kind of honor the sort of Victorian, ghost story that A Christmas Carol really is. But that's sort of my prep. I just like work the shit out of my lines, and then get into the room and work with David, and then bring Connor in once we feel pretty good about bringing. And Connor comes in that last week, and then we open the play.
Is this okay for kids? Would you say? I mean,
yes, very much. Yeah. It's creepy, right? Yeah. It's scary, but in the kind of best way for kids, right? This isn't Saw. Nobody's arm is getting like cut off, right? There's no real gore. There's no like body horror, anything like that. I mean, like, it's a doorknob that turns into a face that turns back into a doorknob. Like, that's scary. Like, psychologically, it's scary and creepy, but it's also really lovely. I think there's a great message to it, and I think that's especially good for kids to leave with that message of, like, especially in this day and age. Like, we're living in a country.
Nice, right? Ultimately, be nice.
Yeah, be nice. I mean, right? Be nice. We're living in a country right now that isn't very nice, and it's telling us that it's okay not to be nice, that it's okay to not care for people, to not care for the those that don't have what we have. And it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's funny because, like, it resonated last year, obviously, right? Because it was right after the election. It certainly resonated the year before, because the story will always resonate. But like this year, I think now I look at the text this year and I go, wow, this really, it's not hard for me to go to that place. There's one line in this play. It's an interesting line that I deliver, and I always get personally get overcome with it. And I'm talking about the Cratchit family, and I'm just saying, but like that they don't really have anything, right? They don't, but that they're happy, right? They're like sort of generous with one another. And sort of I'm making the point of like these people, they deserve more, right? Like look at the happiness that they're able to find with one another with nothing, with like literally nothing, and yet they have to they can do that, they can reach that, right? And yet they have to struggle with this idea that they have to just continually and constantly struggle. It's like that is not fair. Like they're the best of us, and if they're the best of us, why do they have to struggle, right? It seems like the folks that have like the most, the haves, especially in this country, are the fucking worst people. Sorry about dropping the F-bomb, but they're the fucking worst people. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And this story sort of like, I can think of like 5 white billionaires right off the top of my head who need to be visited by 3 ghosts. Except
Melinda Gates. We got to give her props.
Yeah.
Melinda's doing right by the money.
It's true, but there's more than 5 others, Benita.
Oh yeah.
A so-called maybe soon to be trillionaire is one that could definitely be visited by maybe not 3 ghosts, maybe like 10 ghosts. You know what I mean?
So is that what it is, David? Because it fascinates me that Christmas Carol is one of the most produced things. I mean, in every iteration and adaptation. I mean, you did Sherlock Carol last year, right? I mean, like everybody loves the heart of the story. And there's companies, the Goodman, Fords, that do it almost 50 years now. Every year it's part of their season. So is that what makes the show so appealing? Or what do you think it is about this story that trumps all others? And when it comes to Christmas or just the message?
Well, it's like sort of like we're not in a theater, so I can say this. It's sort of like Macbeth, right? The reason Macbeth really works is that it's a compelling story, right? It has a clear beginning, a clear middle, clear end. It's like we're teaching 5th graders storytelling, right? Like beginning, middle, end, right? So it's got a clear through line, right? But what he does, and he does this for James the First, right? He adds the witches in. Because there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he kind of already had Macbeth ready to go, and then inserted the witches to make, because James liked burning witches. James was known to be like, a real demon, like really into demonology and all these things, and just loved burning women with opinions. James really liked burning women. And so he puts these 3 witches in and gives it this sort of supernatural edge to it. And it, do Macbeth without the witches, does it work? It's like, yeah, no, it works. That story works, but it's better with the witches. It's definitely like more interesting. And if you look at Christmas Carol, right, very strong story, right, really clear through line. You have this, I think the best part of Christmas Carol for me is the redemption. It's one of the greatest character arcs of all time, And if we like the opposite, the sort of opposite character arc is Macbeth, right? We're introduced to this guy who we think is a pretty good guy, right? And then he ends up, he's a monster at the end of the play, right? And this is sort of the opposite. We meet this guy who's a monster at the, he's just a monster. He's got the line. Wes didn't have in the original adaptation. And I asked him, I was like, hey, can I tweak the text? It's when the 2 gentlemen come in asking for money. And he's like, people are dying. They're like, wait, like people are dying. He goes, well, they had better do it to decrease the surplus population. And I'm like, that's an evil line, right? That's a billionaire line right there, right? And for him to go from that, right, to the end where he is just the most magnanimous, he's just the nicest guy ever. And and we're told he lives the rest of his life that way, right? He lives this incredibly charitable life. And so you're like, wow, that is a huge arc. And so I think it is that, but it's also a ghost story. So we have the supernatural. So that makes it super fun, right? And interesting and spooky, and scary, and ethereal. When we meet that first ghost isn't scary. That first ghost is sort of ethereal. That second ghost is a lot of fun. And then that third ghost is frightening. So it has that little supernatural element in it, which really kind of makes it better than it probably would without, right? And then you have this incredible redemption arc at the end. And I think that like that resonates. That's the universal. It's why, look, it's why we're going to continue doing Romeo and Juliet. We're going to continue doing Macbeth. And we're going to, people are going to still continue to do Our Town, right? Because it's just a play that works and works and works. It never doesn't work. And we'll always see productions and live action features of A Christmas Carol, right?
I have to wonder if the folks that we would all like to send 3 ghosts to,
Yeah.
when they see a production of this, if it resonates at all. If you are Scrooge at heart, I wonder how this lands.
I wonder if any of them have ever seen A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like,
how about we tape it and send over? Oh, I'm sorry.
Bubble
over my head talking.
You sat through a whole production of Christmas Carol, right? Or maybe they saw a bad version of it. Maybe it was just one that didn't, it was too musical, right? Listen, we don't have to talk about who or anything like that, but every one of all 3 of us have seen a bad production of A Christmas Carol, right? And usually, the thing is, like, I'm 52, right? And so I feel like I'm at a good age to do the show. And I've said this over and over, like, I'm going to do this show for every year until I die. That's my, right now, that's my point. Like, I kind of have my Christmas, like, can I get booked for a Christmas show and do this show at the same time? Proved it last year. Was able to do it. I did fewer performances of this, but I was able to do it. So it's not like I have to give up a Christmas show. I can always still do this. But at 52, I feel like I got the gray. I've lived a life. I feel like I get it. And the older I get, I feel like every year I get a little bit older, right? And it resonates a little bit more. And I think it'll continue to do that. But once I hit like 66, 67, I know. Now, I'll have done it many times by then. I'll have over a decade under my belt, right? So hopefully the lines will just always be there, right? Because we know you get to that age and all of a sudden the lines aren't quite there. And the worst thing you can do is watch a production of A Christmas Carol where that actor does not know their lines, right? If they don't know their lines, how the hell you think you're going to do? Like, I think like Christmas Carol, as far as like playing that track, right? Just the Scrooge track. Forget about like me doing the one-man show thing, but like just playing Ebenezer Scrooge. That leap that you have to make, right? From that beginning to like just pure joy, right? It is an Olympian kind of acting exercise. It really, really is. So if you don't know your lines, right? If you don't know what's coming next or the text, you're kind of screwed. You're not gonna believe it. You have to, because
you would be Scrooge. Hey, listen, I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and we would be remiss if I didn't get in where, when, how. Give us the 411, as the kids would say.
I'm going to give you too. But... Okay, so like I said, this opens Victorian Stroll, huge event in Troy. I love it. It's an annual event. It opens that weekend, so it'll be Friday and Saturday. And I'm looking at the wrong document. I'm sorry. Friday and Saturday, December 5th and 6th at 8 p.m. And then on the day of Stroll, we have a large event in the waiting room, which is taking place. I'll give you those details in a second. But on December 7th, on Victorian Stroll, I'm doing 2 performances, 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. We're also doing, that's a fundraiser for, obviously, Troy Foundry. It's me presenting it. Technically, it's David Girard. Troy Foundry technically isn't presenting this. It's me presenting it as a fundraiser for Troy Foundry. That has to do with Actors Equity. But December 7th, 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. But there's going to be some live music that day, some art in that space. So we're actually doing a full Victorian Stroll event in the waiting room that day. So December 5th and 6th at 8 p.m., December 7th at 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. And then I pick it up the next week, December 10th, 11th, and 12th at 8 p.m. So basically
And the location?
Basically a 2-weekend-ish.
Right.
And it is at the waiting room. The waiting room is a new space. Well, newish. We've been using it for a couple years. And it is 19 3rd Street, but the entrance is from the alley, which is the alley between alley between 3rd Street and 2nd Street. You go down Broadway, and it's the back of the building. So 19 3rd Street is on 3rd Street, but the entrance to the waiting room, it's where the old senior center used to be. And I discovered this theater. I was at the bar that I own 518 Craft, and my buddy Jeremy was like, "Hey, there's a theater over in the Franklin Alley." And I thought he was talking about the Franklin Alley Social Club. And I was like, "Well, that's not really theater." And he goes, No, on the this side, right? Like right around the corner from Bootleggers in the alley there. And I was like, "What?" And so I kind of and this woman had this thrift store set up, and I walked into the back, and I was like, "There's a stage, right? It's big, like kind of Victorian looking room." And I was like, whoa, it's amazing. And it's for somebody who's like very aware of every found space in Troy, because my company, we've performed in 50 different locations in 8 years. I was like, whoa, how did I know about this? And what I realized is I had toured that space in 2019 and was supposed to do a devised production with a buddy of mine who directs for Tectonic of Julius Caesar upstairs in the Masonic Temple, because there's a Masonic Temple on the 3rd floor. But I never looked at the back of the space when I toured it, because I was going to use the upper floor for it. So I was like, oh, this is at the back of the space. So I know the owner. I was like, oh, this is Bob Bedard's space. And so I contacted Bob, and we kind of warmed it up by doing, I think we did a couple half-baked and readings in there. And then eventually, obviously, we did the first year of Christmas Carol. Last year we did it. I did one performance at Cap Rep, which were you at that, Benita? I can't remember.
I saw it at the waiting room.
You saw it at the waiting room.
I saw you at Cap Rep in the other show, but I saw the waiting room. And let me just, as I see the clock, and listen, go see this. This is worth your time. It's wonderful. If you're not in the spirit before, you will be after. David, you are amazing in it. You sit there spellbound. Everybody becomes, I think, 10 years old as you watch this. Bravo, kudos, enjoy it. The waiting room, we're going to have all the info on our site. And thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If I were to say one last thing, that this show is so about direct address and storytelling, and it's something that Connor and I really have unpacked. We're working on another one-man show, War of the Worlds. We're doing an adaptation of War of the Worlds together, and we're using this format because we think we figured something out in the way that I do the direct address. And I mean, I'm there. I'm on you. I go through the audience, and there's something about the direct address and always staying in contact with the audience, even if you're falling into a scene and playing multiple characters or whatever, that you never lose your connection to the audience, is what makes this so unique. Because I don't think I've seen much like this. Jefferson Mays did a one-man Christmas Carol during 2020, during the pandemic, and you could watch it online. That's different, right? I would have loved to have seen a live production of that, because there's just something about that connection to the audience and the sort of the storytelling tradition, which is really great. And it is, like, I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but it is great. It's great. It's really good. I'm
so proud. Let you have that last word, because we've got to go. It's going to cut us off in a second.
Thank you so much, David. Yes, it's my Christmas wish. I'm going to go see it this year for sure. But thank you, listeners. I'm Ellen Cribbs. Thank you so much for listening to the Everything Theater podcast. Special thanks goes out to Alice Grinling for our photography and Justin Friello for composing our amazing theme song. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to share your thoughts or what's going on in your theater community, you can reach out to us on social media or through our email at everythingtheaterpodcast@gmail.com. Till next time. It's everything, everything, everything.